Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. The phone number here, 877-973-7425. I'm in the home studio today, which I haven't been in since January. But I've got a sick kid at home. My wife is at her oncology scans. It's her every 3-month scans, and I wanted to be with her, but between the indictment in Fulton County with President Trump and my son is homesick today from school, I needed to be home, so she's on her own today. Prayers appreciated. She meets with the doctor in about an hour. She's had her scans. We just don't know the results yet. So it's been a very wild and convoluted day. I've had a lot of radio interviews. I will be on with Brett Baer on Fox News tonight to talk about the Fulton County indictment. And then I've got my wife's situation, my son's situation. Today's a very insane day. I don't even have the call screening program open yet, because I just want to talk to you about the indictment. I have read the indictment. It's over 90 pages. I have read it, and I want to talk to you as listeners. And I'm happy in the next little while after I talk to you to answer your questions. But I want to lay this out for you because there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of disinformation. There's a lot of people just willfully telling you things that are not true in order to inflame your sensibilities. I at least want to be analytical with you. Now, what are my qualifications on this? If you're new to the program, if you're listening on WFTL, if you're listening on in Connecticut, if you're listening on WORD in Greenville, South Carolina, some of our newer affiliates around the country, I was not only a lawyer in the state of Georgia, but I used RICO. I used it civilly. I was also a criminal defense attorney in the state of Georgia. I know of which I speak. Dare I say expert on this as far as you're concerned. I don't need other people to be on the radio with me to talk about this because I know this area of law. I used this area of law. We'll get into the politics as well, but let's talk about the law first. And there are a couple of things that I need to get out of the way for you. First, every state in the nation, all 50, are semi-sovereign entities. The whole purpose of the federal constitution is you had these independent nations that ceded some sovereignty to a unitary government in Washington, or unified government in Washington. But they retained all of their other sovereignty. That's what the 10th Amendment is all about. These are independent nations that gave up some of their independence, but kept a whole lot. So every single state in the nation has a constitution, and each state's constitution is different. Some states have very, very powerful governors. The governor of New Jersey, for example, appoints pretty much everyone in the executive and judicial branches. The governor in Georgia is more restrained. On economic issues, the governors of the state of Georgia have lots of power. On criminal issues, election issues, things like that, they don't. The governor of the state of Georgia does not have the pardon power. Years ago, there was a big scandal. They amended the constitution of the state and established a board of pardon and paroles and took from the governor his pardon power and gave it to an independent branch of the executive. That branch, or that entity, has gubernatorial appointments that are spread out over time, so this governor actually hasn't made a lot of appointments to it yet. So you have a board of pardon and paroles. They control the pardon and parole and commutation of sentences. The governor of Georgia can't pardon Donald Trump, even if he wanted to. Likewise, the governor of the state of Georgia, unlike the governor of Florida, for example, does not have the power to remove a district attorney. The governor has the power to suspend a district attorney if the district attorney is indicted for a felony in a superior court in Georgia. The governor can suspend the district attorney, cannot remove the district attorney unless the district attorney is found guilty in a court of law. There is a law the legislature in Georgia passed this year that would allow a district attorney to be removed for a failure to prosecute. So they couldn't remove Fani Willis is her name, not Fanny. I've been saying Fanny, but it's Fani Willis, the district attorney in Fulton County. They couldn't remove her from office for prosecuting Trump. They would have to find a prosecution she should have prosecuted and didn't and go after her that way. But even then, the governor can't do it in the state of Georgia. It's an independent review panel. And even then, the law has been halted while it's under judicial review. Some district attorneys are suing over the constitutionality of the law, so it's not even enforced yet. So you got to take Brian Kemp out of the issue. Brian Kemp doesn't have the power to do what a lot of Trump supporters are asking him to do. Then that gets us to RICO and the racketeering laws in the state of Georgia. RICO stands for the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. What is racketeering? Let's start with the basics. Racketeering is two or more people working together in a criminal enterprise. What is a criminal enterprise? A criminal enterprise is an effort to engage in a pattern of conduct. Two or more people engaging in conduct to break the law. So it could be an enterprise such as a drug running operation. That's an actual business. You're making money out of it, and it's completely illegal, racketeering. In this case, what the district attorney alleges is that President Trump, his personal lawyers, and a team of campaign operatives around him, including his chief of staff in the White House, the chairman of the state Republican Party in Georgia, and others, worked together to overthrow the election, to throw out the election. Now, what does that all mean? Ironically, Donald Trump claims the 2020 election was stolen from him, and the district attorney in Fulton County, Georgia, alleges that it was Donald Trump himself who was trying to steal a lawful election. The district attorney begins with an interesting revelation. And I believe it was public. Not all the details are known. But on October 31st, 2020, about a week before the election, on Halloween, someone labeled unindicted co-conspirator number one, that is someone who participated in the criminal activity but not enough to themselves be charged with a crime. That person told Donald Trump, advised Donald Trump that on election night, he needed to claim that he won the election and say it was being stolen from him. Thus begins, in the mind of the DA, and I'm just trying to explain the lawsuit to you, thus begins the criminal enterprise. With that act on October 31st, 2020, Donald Trump being advised to claim he won, but it was being stolen from him, that began the criminal enterprise to steal the election from Joe Biden. And everything thereafter played to that criminal enterprise. Now, there's something happening. If you read the indictment, and you may be seeing screenshots of the indictment from people, you may even be hearing either ignorant or malicious people tell you that, Donald Trump, they say that one of the things he did was he tweeted out a TV appearance on OAN News. That's not a crime. And some people say they're charging him with looking up a phone number for someone. No, they're not. So here's what happens in a RICO lawsuit. You allege racketeering. You allege that you are engaged in a criminal enterprise to do some illegal activity. What you have to show in the RICO case is all of the acts, legal and illegal, that were taken to advance the criminal enterprise. So they have to, in the lawsuit, they actually have to list all of the actions taken to show the crimes. Some of those actions are explicitly legal actions. What they do is they show you all of the legal actions that were taken that then led up to the criminal activity. They can't just put the criminal activity in there because, again, they're alleging a conspiracy. They're alleging people worked together to advance a crime. Some of the work they did was perfectly legal, like calling people, getting people on the phone, asking people for information, all that stuff perfectly legal. What they allege is that they wanted to steal the election, so they had to plant seeds in the public to cast doubt on the election so that they could generate support for overturning the election, to pressure lawmakers to allow an alternate slate of electors to be seated in the Electoral College to then steal the election. And a lot of what went into that was legal. So, for example, what you have in the criminal indictment, and these are the screenshots, you have to show acts of racketeering activity and overt acts in furtherance of the conspiracy. Some of them are very, very innocuous. Like, for example, on the 15th day of November, 2020, Rudolph William Louis Giuliani placed a telephone call to unindicted co-conspirator individual number 2 and left an approximately 83-second-long voicemail message for the conspirator, making statements concerning fraud in the November 3rd election in Fulton County, Georgia. The telephone call was an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. Sounds very innocuous. So he called and left a message. On the 21st day of November, 2020, Mark Randall Meadows, Chief of Staff to the President of the United States, sent a text message to U.S. Representative Scott Perry from Pennsylvania and stated, quote, "Can you send me the number for the Speaker and the leader of the Pennsylvania legislature? POTUS wants to chat with them." Now, you're looking at that saying, how is that illegal? It's not. It's not illegal. It is not illegal, but they have to state that because they have to show all of the steps taken in the lead up to that thing they say was, in fact, a crime. They have to show those things. They have to tie them all together to the actual thing they allege was a crime. Those things matter. Also, many of you believed the statements that were made under oath in state legislative hearings in Georgia about how the Georgia election was improperly conducted. For example, that at least 96,600 mail-in ballots were counted in the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election in Georgia, despite there being no record of those ballots having been returned to a county election office. That's one of the statements made to a Senate Judiciary Subcommittee hearing in the Georgia Senate. That is, according to the district attorney, a lie. It's a false statement made knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully to a governmental entity by Rudy Giuliani. Therefore, he's being charged with false statements and writings. What the prosecutor has to show is that multiple independent crimes happened. But each of those independent crimes were then tied to an overall conspiracy or criminal enterprise to overthrow the election. The problem for Donald Trump is that some of these crimes he clearly didn't know were happening. Some of the people actually behaved very stupidly, including showing up at an election worker's house trying to intimidate the election worker. I guarantee you Donald Trump had no idea that was happening. But because all of these things are alleged by the DA to be a part of this criminal conspiracy, they get tied to Donald Trump. And he has to own the behaviors of the others within the criminal enterprise. This is a very comprehensive and complicated case. I suspect too complicated to really be prosecuted. And because they're suing Jeffrey Clark, who was a deputy attorney general, and suing Donald Trump, who at the time was president of the United States, arguably this could be taken to federal court because there's a federal statute that says if you sue a member of the executive branch who is acting in their authority as a member of the executive branch, that case has to be moved to federal court. This is going to be a very long process. But at the end of the day, you have to understand, if you read the indictment, what they're trying to show is that there were a bunch of legal and illegal acts that were all done in furtherance of a conspiracy, the conspiracy being to steal the 2020 election. Trump supporters believe the 2020 election was stolen from him. The district attorney in Georgia says actually it was Donald Trump who was trying to steal the election. That's what this indictment is all about. Whether you believe it or not, whether you think it's political or not, that's what the indictment is about.